World of YouTube, Archie here with a another video of the series, the King Philip War. Let me put this up here. What you are looking at, and I wouldn't think in a million years I would have found this at the Fitchburg Public Library. This is in a now it was a book I got out of that you're not allowed to take out, but I got the photocopy in it, and man, I am just still in shock that I even found this. And I don't know, I'm gonna go back and I have to go look through it because I didn't have much time to go over it and all. But as you can see up here in the top is Massachusetts communities attacked in King Philip's War. I am very excited that I have found this. 600 men had fallen, 600 dwellings commanded, consumed, sorry, it looks different in the phone. Every 11th family was houseless, and every 11th soldier had sunk to his grave in this war. See Goodrich History of the United States of America, 1852, page 56, whatever that is. This is just awesome that I found this, and this will be going over. I'm just gonna go over what King Philip did and what he attacked and accomplished. Plymouth is over here, and this is where obviously Plymouth Rock was founded by first man to walk on here, which supposedly was Christopher Columbus, but others say it wasn't him. Who knows? I can't get into that right now. But down here we have Mount Hope, and this would be Bristol, Rhode Island right now. Back in the day, which I'm going to show you also, I took this copy, is a sketched out map of Rhode Island. And, sorry, it's sideways. Gotta tip it up a minute. This is going to be a pain in the neck. Right here, I darkened the line. All right here used to be a part of Massachusetts back in this King Philip War. Right here is Mount Hope. This is the Hope Bay, as they called it. Right here is the beginning of the Taunton River that brings you up through the Mass. Now, this is where the actual war began, of course. King Philip has a chair here. I'm going to try and get to this point sometime. I'm definitely going to try and get to the swamp that he was murdered in. And, but like I said, I'm going over detail of how this war broke out and where it started and the points of interest that I will be searching. Hopefully I can get to all of them. It won't be, if it ain't going to be this year, it'll be sometime this next summer. Definitely. But there are points of interest that I'm going to go over, of course, that are around me now. The main points of interest, I'll say. The last place I'm probably going to be is in Bristol, Rhode Island, of the Great Swamp Fight, and pay my respects to King Philip himself. Now, back in them days, like I said in the intro, and I'll say it throughout the videos, Indians literally relied on the spirits of the dead, of former warriors and chiefs, and to look upon as their saviors, their guide through life, and their how would you say, their way of learning and how to fight and what to do within, their boundaries of, I'm going to flip this back over, but their boundaries of when they get stuck into situations and all that, and that was their gods. I mean, they did have other gods, but it wasn't the Jesus Christ that you know of. And that's pretty much one of the pieces of evidence that relate to why the Indians resented the Englishmen, due to the fact that the Englishmen wanted the Indians to, do their religion. Get rid of the Indian ways and come to the English ways. And they did not want to do that. Some did, some didn't. And they just, the ones that didn't, they weren't being rude about it, as we would say today, and they weren't being ignorant about it. But they just did not want to be, the Englishmen's, they just didn't want to do their ways. And that was it. And I forgot to mention in the last video, but I saved it till now anyways, because it's two key important things that happened in this war that started the war. And it has to do with two deaths other than King Philip's brother. There was two more mysterious deaths. One wasn't mysterious, but it was said that King Philip knew about this war. I mean, no war. I'm looking at the paper here. Get stuck in your brain. Knew about the death, but he didn't. And it was a praying Indian, of course, but he was labeled before as a traitor, as we call them today, snitches. And supposedly 3 of King Philip's men had killed him. But in the book I read, The Great Powwow, it states that, King Philip did not know about that death. But just because of the simple fact that it was his 3 men that killed him, which, King Philip's men were getting restless of waiting for King Philip to start this war. King Philip was very smart. King Philip was beyond what the Englishmen knew of the Indians when they first got there, and what they've learned of them so far up until this point before the war. And that's why they named him King Philip. He earned the king in his name due to the fact of how very smart he was. And the Englishmen feared that, and they started getting very fidgety and very, paranoid of the simple fact that, right, if this man is now chief because his brother died a mysterious death, but, I know, and King Philip and the Alexander's wife knows that he was poisoned. And I believe it all day due to the fact of he was going to start a rebellion against the Englishmen. You got to remember, these Englishmen weren't nice to the friggin' Indians. The Indians helped the Englishmen, with their first winter. When they first set foot on these lands, they would have died in the first winter, but the Indians helped them get through it. They taught them how to get through it. And that's how peaceful the Indians were. But due to the fact that the Indians had another, personality, but it wasn't their fault. It was due to the Englishmen's fault, giving them the rum, the booze, the liquor, as we call it today. But back then, you couldn't give Indians that stuff. They were already wild people. They weren't wild, savage beasts, but they were wild people. You can say they lived in the wild, and like I said in the intro, that the Indians learned from the wild. They learned how to hunt, how to pray, how to capture, how to kill from, animals. Proven fact. Talking and stuff, it will be a mystery of how they came about with their languages and how they communicate with each other and that so forth. But everybody knows when they started coming after the Englishmen, the Englishmen feared the Indians badly and were very paranoid at this point of time. And when they found out that King Philip was coming, and he didn't say nothing, of course, he was keeping it under his belt, and he was going along life at this time before the war, as nothing was going on. But that snitch Indian, praying Indian as they called him back then, but we call them snitches, said something, and the men of King Philip didn't want to wait for Philip, so they killed him himself. Now, in some of the stuff you find on the internet, one person had said King Philip told the Englishmen in Plymouth that this was an Indian matter, mind their business, but it wasn't. I just said a few minutes ago, King Philip did not know of this murder until it was finished, until his men got captured, until his men were tried and hung. He knew nothing about it. His men went against him in his words and killed that man himself. So that made the Englishmen more paranoid, though, to go figure that we need to start doing more to the Indians and finding out, because also it's the fault of the Englishmen to give the Indians liquor. It was also fault that they was trading off guns for Indians, things to teach them how to survive, things to teach them, to live with the winter cold, and the Indians knew things that the Englishmen didn't know, and the Englishmen knew things that the Indian didn't know. That's why they all got along at one time, a point. But this war broke out. And the last thing that started this war, and it's got to do not with King Philip, it's got to do with the Englishmen and their paranoid actions. They called upon a praying Indian tribe that turned to their religion, but they, and I've saved this for this part, I didn't say it in the intro, but these Indians were called the Plymouth, so they went. And when they got there, all the paranoid Englishmen were waiting for them, lined up with guns. Now this is how paranoid the Englishmen were. And when they got there, they're all, just standing around waiting to be talked to, but they couldn't understand why the Englishmen were there with their guns. And while they all lined up in front of the Plymouth colonists to talk and to find out what they wanted, the Englishmen had their guns drawn upon them. Then they were told to put them down because the praying Indians, they thought, were going to come with weapons. They came with nothing but the clothes that they used to wear back in the day. They didn't even come with bow and arrow. They came with nothing. And as many as Englishmen were there, and they all dropped their rifles as they were told by the sergeant, as I'll call him, sergeant. They were called other things back then, but can't remember offhand. One of them fired a shot, killed an Indian for no reason. He was arrested, obtained, tried at that by a judge. But he was acquitted and not charged, and he didn't go to jail or he didn't get hung. And the Indians were now bullshit, as we say today. They, the Englishmen gave him some bullshit to step in. And that was it. Why did this man get off? But many Indians in the past did things, due to the English ways that wasn't proper, which they had their misfit hooligan Indians, they called them, and did some things, and they got killed. They got their heads chopped right off. No question asked. But this, and if a murder happened, they'd get killed. Definitely get killed. If some Indian did something to someone and killed, they got their head chopped off. This guy didn't get nothing. He said he accidentally misfired his gun. But how can you accidentally misfire the gun when it should have been down at arms, you know, aimed at the Indians? You should have listened to your drill sergeant and dropped the gun. No, he literally misfired for what? And that right there is what led to this war. They've had enough. The Indians had enough. Enough of slavery, enough of being treated, enough of their land being taken, being treated like shit. It was like I said before. If you got the Middle East coming in here, taking over our country right now as we speak, as we cannot do the Pledge Allegiance to the flag. We could not do God bless you around anybody no more just for a simple sneeze. What would you do if the Middle East wanted us to change our birth names to their names like the Englishmen did to the Indians? Metacom was King Philip's name, and he had to change it. So why? Why would you let someone in our country of today do that back then? Do it now. You would not let that happen. No one would let that happen. And the Indians had enough. A guy misfired his gun. I think it's bullshit. I think he shot him because he was paranoid of what was going to happen, and they brought it upon it themselves. And I respect the Indians even more to this day, like I say, due to the endurance. It wasn't just the black man in slavery. Indians were slaves too. And it's overlooked that this war, what was really going on back in them days. So, anyways, as we sit here, as we got this Mount Hope, as we're going to call it, and I showed you the other map where this would be. This is where the war began, and this is where the war ended. Over here was the first attack of Swansea, Mass. Of course, it led to Bridgewater, and after Bridgewater, in the swamps. Now, this is where I believe, and I'll be trying to get there. Like I said, I don't know if it'll be this year or next summer, but I think this is why this Bridgewater Triangle has got to do with a lot of hauntings and paranormal, because of the simple fact that the swamp in Bridgewater was one of the first biggest, bloodiest battles of this war. And they say, in the articles online about these swamps, that the Indian called them the resting place for the spirits. Well, not only are they the resting places, for the spirits. I said it before, Indians used the swamps to disappear. And this is where the Englishmen started to freak out, because they never seen anything like this that the Indian did. Back in them days, of course, these days you see things disappear. It's freaky as shit, but back then, oh man, they called it sinister. That's why they called these people the devil, which they're not the devil. They had their simple life ways of how they did things, and they did it good and spooky. I like the way they did things, and the first bloody war started here. Now, they did, I think in the book they had gone out to Springfield next. I forgot to circle that, but that's in the book of the Great Powwow. Longmeadow was not mentioned in the Powwow book. Westfield wasn't. Northampton, I think, was. But that's what they did. They started here, 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 went over to here. And then it was, oh no, actually what had happened also after Bridgewater, they went to Mount Wachusett. This is where, no, after these wars, right, King Philip started to figure out ways of getting the other tribes to join him. And I mean, they ended up here after all this and needing more men. I mean, the Englishmen did have advantage on the Indian, and that was due to weaponry and all the other praying Indians that didn't want to get involved with King Philip. But he ended up on Mount Wachusett, and Mount Wachusett, I'll tell you right now, is one of the most places that he stayed in on this mountain. This is what they would call a stronghold. And as you see, it all friggin' went out the friggin', it all ended up in a big, huge war for a whole year. And these Indians, man, I tell you, they covered a lot of ground. And it wasn't until, Lancaster and Groton, they say that Willard was an important man that moved from Plymouth because his house caught on fire, but they wanted to come out here and, settle out here. And Groton is now Groton, and there is Ayr, which Ayr wasn't even existing back then on this. But two of the greatest attacks happened there to one of the most important people of this story. He had two farms, one in Lancaster, one in Ayr. Indians in Ayr used to work at his farm, which I'm going to bring you there next. That is in front of the Fort Devens gates. There is now like I said, an electrical box, power lines that are there for this town. And these are the most parts of the story that I mentioned is the ones I have circled, which is Bridgewater, Taunton. Taunton was another place they hit, but there was a man in there they would not attack because they respected him dearly, an Englishman. So, I mean, they went straight into Bridgewater, but later on went into Taunton. But Deerfield, this is another place I want to hit. But this right here, after hitting these two towns and everything, this was the most successful battle of King Philip. And I've been looking into Deerfield on Wikipedia, and they talk about a tribe that was out there, and I think they did join the Philip War, but they say that they attacked and ambushed a bunch of Englishmen, bringing supplies or whatever through here, but they don't mention nothing. I got to call the library on Monday and check up on this, but they don't mention nothing of King Philip, only that the war had made it here. But they do not mention that this war, that was fought here, was one of the most craziest things the Englishmen ever had witnessed in Deerfield, Mass. And that was King Philip was there on horse, and the Englishmen tried shooting at him. And every shot they took, and they shot from every angle, they said that he dodged every bullet. They could not hit that man on that horse. They said he looked like he was flying. And I mean, literally, they were extremely, at this point, freaked. They didn't know what they were going to do. The Englishmen at this point of time of Deerfield fight, they thought they were going to lose after this battle. And I mean, it's just crazy on how they just explain that part of the story. Like I say, I might have to get on the computer to do it. But I have pictures of the book, the writing of it. And I want to blow up special parts in it that I'm gonna try and get into these videos of what the book is written and how you would read it, of course. But how the book is written, I want people to see how it is written in this book. So it's gonna take a while. You gotta bear with me because right now, I'm only working on the phone. I ain't got no internet off the computer, and the computer has more, megabytes to download pictures in the videos, and I can't do that on the phone. So, but like I said, this I could not imagine in a million years I would have came up with this map. I was gonna post and try and go through everything on the map, but it's already here. This is every fight fought in this King Philip War. And as you can see, and then like I said, all the circled ones were the major ones. Of course, right here where King Philip was shot dead by his own blood, his own kind. And it sucks to say that, it had to end that way. And I'll just continue to say, shame on the Englishmen for doing this to the Indians, If anything, and like I said, they wiped out a whole Indian tribe before this war because of a chief, had enough of the Englishmen and their horse shit. There's only so much anybody can take, and like us, how long are we, the United States of America, going to take that we can't say the Pledge of Allegiance in our school, that we can't say God bless you, that we have to one day maybe change our language and speak the native language, native tongue of the Middle East because they're offended of our language too? What if that happens, You need to think. And people say peace, not war, but what about the Englishmen? What happens when, they come take over us and we become slaves? What if that starts up with, the Middle East? How do you know you got South Korea making a nuclear bomb right now, trying to send over here and kill us. This Jin Kim Il, fucking this son of the late great dipshit. It's disgusting. And the Indian tribes, they've been through it too. Nothing's changed. It's all about fucking money, greed, and who is superior on these grounds. It's disgusting. But me, knowing that I got part Indian, whether I'm Canadian Indian or not, I have part Indian, and I'm doing this in respects to to Metacom himself. He was a very wise, noble man, and he knew what was happening. And right, who wouldn't want to take back their land? Because this was just disgusting, man. They tortured their Indians, they slaved and sold them, and they were taking over the land. Where else will they go? They only know one place. Why push them out? Why not live like we do now? We now have to live peace and harmony whether we like it or not. I'm in a project right now. I have no racist slurs to say anybody about in this place because we're all one. We're like a big community. We are a community. We're like a big family. I wanted to say that. I got to deal with it. I ain't got nothing against it. Who cares? There's a lot of cultures in here. You got Chinese, you got African, you got Spanish, you got Portuguese. You got all walks of life in this place. I wish I had some Indians in here. But it's only natural to live in peace and harmony is right. It should be that way, but when you got assholes out there, you got to put up your dukes and you got to fight them and you got to teach them a lesson on you can't do this. You can't take over the fucking world. And if South Korea nukes us, if they happen to nuke us, we're all dropping dead like flies. Here they come on over, taking us over. What the fuck? There's one more thing I want to say about this. And it's got to do around the Mount Wachusett area. My wife's grandmother owned a house about 5 or 6 miles away from Mount Wachusett. I'm going to bring you there. That place has ghosts. It's going to be a haunted place too. And what's very important to me about it is my wife was there as a child and had a dream. And she came up with this a long time ago, and it didn't dawn on me until she said it again, not a few weeks ago about it. No, I remembered it, and I think I mentioned it. And it was about a dream she had in that house. She's up in the woods, back in the woods where she used to play as a child and run around with her cousins, Dennis and her other cousin and Sherry, and they used to run the back of the woods. And she had this dream about Indians. And if you go further enough back in the wooded area of her house on Turnpike Road, there is a huge, it's almost like a mountain. It's not as big as Mount Wachusett, but it goes pretty high, and it's high enough to have a tower on it with a light to flash so planes won't hit it. And it's over by the Fitchburg golf course, out in the back of that. And she had a dream that Indians were sitting up there having a great fire for themselves, just sitting around peaceful. And I'm coming to think that was probably en route to Mount Wachusett. So being in here and doing their attacks, and when they had to run back to Mount Wachusett, I think that might have had to been one of their stomping grounds. And I got to get up there too. I'm going to do a visual video of the front of the house. I'm going to go over what happened what happened there with me, with my 2 kids as we went homeless and, came back from a nightmare trip from Florida. We moved out there, moved back, and we lived with the mother-in-law for a while. But there was some incidents that I'll go over in another video. But putting all this together now, and back then I would have never thought of it, because I didn't read the book of the Great Powwow back then. But I'm for damn sure that was a crossing ground for the Indians, because of the simple fact of one thing. Indians, when there's a swamp over there, used to stay close to the swamps and used to stay close to the mountains so they can keep their eyes on the old Englishmen trying to sneak up behind them. And that might have been a place for them, on their journeys to Mount Wachusett after attacking, as you can see, all these towns right here. I mean, they're not in the book. These were, they mention them, but they don't have no details of what happened at these ones. But these ones they do, because these were the more powerful fights that they had. Don't get me wrong, a lot of people got killed throughout here, but these ones were the worst. 2 fires in Lancaster burnt down to the ground these farms. And Mount Wachusett was the stronghold, and all Indians sat up there watching the Englishmen all through the land. But Lancaster also, I have a shot of the mountain. Used to watch Mount Wachusett, one of the Mr. Willard, and his house is up there. And I think it might be not the original, but one of them is still up there, the farmhouse. And you can see Mount Wachusett on a clear day. And they even got a road up there you can go on in Harvard, and you can see it. And it's pretty drastical up there. It's pretty, see everything. And Willard used to watch their, Indians used to throw out their smoke signals with the fires to the other tribes. And he'd be watching them up there, but the Indians would also be watching the white man. And back then, man, he could hear the Indians do their war cries and dances off that mountain, as far as it was. Because of course, back then you don't have the noise pollution of what we have now. Everything was dead silent back then. When them Indians got going, boy, that's another thing that scared the Englishmen was their war dances and their dances, period. It was a sight to see, and I wish I was back there to see it. I would love to. I mean, there are still tribes out there, but who knows if they can do what they used to do back in them days, because they were very, very powerful. And I mean, they called them sinister dances, scared the shit out of them. You can understand why they wanted to take them down and out, because they knew they had a fight battle from them Indians. But I'm glad I got to get this. This is a big part that I wanted to go over. Like I said, here's the King Rhode Island map. I didn't go much over this, but I mean, as you can see, like I said, Mount Hope, Taunton River, everything is there, and this is the line where Mass is now, Rhode Island now. All this. And Fall River's over here somewhere, so, you know, it's very close to home, but as you can see, a lot of this right here, that's close to home with me, and that's where I'll be taking us on our journey for now. I should be getting that done in the next few months. Other than that, everything down here that I want to go over is going to be here a little later in the day. I do want to try and get to Deerfield, too. That was a huge battle I want to see, and I want to pay my respects there, too. And get more Englishmen died in that battle than Indians. And that was where... Oh, and there's one more thing I got to mention, too. Shit. Somewhere in Littleton, which would be over here, I got to find me some woods that they say the Indians and the Englishmen heard noises coming from them woods that were just... I want to find that because it's... The Indians claim that the devil himself manifests there. So not only, you got the Englishmen calling the Indians devils, it was only common because I think they might have, the Indians might have met the devil themselves. That's what they claim in the Great Powwow book in Littleton somewhere. And it was like from the Lancaster house over. It says a few miles, but it's going to be a bitch to find because it says a few miles in Littleton. In Lancaster to Harvard to Littleton's way off. I don't know. It's going to be a hard find, but I think I'll get it. I want to check. I'm going to be getting into them woods and listening for the noises that they said that are just so strange and far beyond driven of this world that, not even the Indians themselves would mess with that stuff. But who knows? They say they didn't, but I bet you they did. They're crazy like that. Indians back these days were crazy. And I give them some big props for being who they were. And not only were they crazy, and I don't want to label them as monsters, they were also the peacefulest, nicest people you can meet. Like I said in the beginning, they helped the Englishmen when they first got here to survive the first winter. They weren't animals and beasts. And like I said, this story is to make you realize that the Indian tribes did not start this war because they were savage, animal, wild beasts. They started this war because they had enough of being slaved. They had enough of being pushed around. And I'm bringing you place to place. But I also want to pay my respects to the Indians that died in these wars on these lands and battlegrounds. Because, hey, they earned the respect and they deserve the respect. And the story, like I say in the book, is closest to the truth that you're going to get it. And I want to bring it out the way it should be, the right way, and have it respected in memory, because not too many people know about this King Philip's War, and I want it to be known and respected. I want everybody after this story to respect the Indians. And actually, I just seen the Watamapog, I believe it's called, tribe, which is the King Philip in Taunton. They're there now. The Indian tribe was just on the news the other day. And I'm going to see if I can get around to going to see them guys, boy. Because that was the tribe of King Philip. And there's still some living. I want to meet them. And I want to give them the respects, just like this story. I want to give it the respect it deserves. And I want to bring the truth of what it should be. Not all the stuff on the internet you read and making the Indians look like the bad guys, because they weren't. Other than that, you too, until the next video. Out.